also have enough air.
It is intellectually engaging.
And you can only become a leader when there are problems.
I like that.
The same applies to Rwanda, Burundi. So what are we federating?
Whether rights from another country can be, I mean, somebody must be there to hold everybody accountable.
But at the moment, we would rather deal with what we have, make it right.
First of all, we as elites of Uganda, we have made Museveni the issue. I can tell Museveni is not the problem of Uganda. The problems of Uganda are much deeper. We can change the next 20 presidents and we'll still be this roundabout.
Deeply incisive.
The different political forces that we have in the country, in the country, we don't seem to really have achieved minimum political consensus over certain things.
Authentically symbolic and insightful. Behind the Headlines, every Wednesday at 10 p.m. with Charles Odongto. All on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda.
A very good evening and welcome to this edition of Behind the Headlines. My name is Charles Odongtho and I'm your moderator this evening. And today, Wednesday, June 1st, 2022, we are right entering into the middle now of the year and 2 halves now that we are looking at winding within the next 30 days. And I want to welcome you to this edition of Behind the Headlines. Today we are going to be looking at mental health challenge, mental health problem in Uganda, and we are asking ourselves, how big is the challenge? How big is the problem? We are asking ourselves, what can be done? What are the drivers of mental health challenges to our people across the country? We will be looking at a number of issues, and to discuss all those, we have from my extreme left, we have Dr. Obuku Ekwaro, who is a senior medical doctor, former chairperson or president of the Uganda Medical Association. Doctor, you're most welcome to this show.
Thank you, Odongto, and good evening, viewers.
Next to him, we have Mrs. Janet Katana, who is, she works with Safe Places Uganda. She is a co-founder of that organization. They do a lot of counseling. They are into helping people with mental challenges, and we will be we'll have her in the studio as well. Janet, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Charles, and good evening, our viewers.
Next to Janet, we have Dr. Kenneth Kalani Okware, and he's a senior medical officer and psychiatrist with the Ministry of Health. Doctor, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charles, and good evening, viewers.
Good. And Council Sarah Birete, she is in the civil society space, and she is Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance. Sarah, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you, and I hope I'm safe from this.
You sign an urgency order.
You see the funny thing about okay, the joke is that, which is picked from a true medical fact, is that one of the first signs is denial. Now, from their perspective, I'm sure as medical officers, the fact that you are denying and sending it back to them, now they are looking at you as the problem.
More careful.
Diagnosis is beginning. From Nairobi, our colleague, Honorable Ojara Mapenduzi, MP for Bardege-Laibi. Ojara is in Nairobi on parliamentary duty, but most importantly, a good coincidence for us, Ojara has been meeting MPs from Kenya who are also, Kenya also has a major problem of mental challenge in the country, and so they are trying to compare notes, and Ojara is right now visiting there. So we shall be having him through Zoom as well. Honorable, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Lady Charles, and greetings to everyone.
Thank you, and I will ask my people here to enhance your volume a little so that we can have you more, we can have you clearer. But let's come back to start the debate. A big debate, no doubt. When I shared on, on different social media spaces, you could feel it palpable from the kind of response people are having. Unlike when we discuss, politics, people take it, this is any other thing. But today, people kept telling me this is the debate to have. From, someone sent me information from London, from US, and saying this is an important discussion. It affects all of us. It affects the country. It affects the region, it affects the world. So let's start from you, Dr. Kalani. How bad is the problem from official statistics that we have here? And then we need to go into also discussing what are the drivers, what are the major causes of mental health challenges in Uganda?
Okay. So thank you so much, Charles, for that question. Talking about how bad or how big is the problem is already bad. Mental health issues, mental illnesses, and mental disorders have always existed, and the numbers have always been high. But mental health and mental illnesses, there was a quantum leap, I would want to say, or one upsurge of the cases during this COVID time or the COVID situation. So I think it was during this time that everybody got to know that they are not spared. I always use the statement that for as long as you have a brain, you cannot be spared. You can have a mental illness. So the burden is real, and of course, if you talk about mental health, I want to look at the entire spectrum of what mental health is and the mental illnesses at that.
Yeah, maybe perhaps actually we should start from there. What is mental illness?
Yeah. So I would start by defining, I think, what mental health is before. Yeah.
And make it simple, not with jargons, full of jargons.
So mental health is the state of well-being in which an individual is able to realize his or her ability, cope with the daily stresses of life, work productively and fruitfully, and make meaningful relationships, and be able to contribute to society. Now that is very simplistic in that you realize that in order for us to perform or work on a daily basis, you need to have proper mental health. Because we face challenges, we face stresses in our day-to-day lives. We work and the aim is to work productively. The country is what it is because we have many also people working productively and fruitfully. And that means everybody has a degree of mental health. So in other words, we all have mental health. But mental health lies on a spectrum in that you can have good mental health and poor mental health. But it's our struggle on a daily to ensure that we have good mental health. So for example, when you have stresses, you have challenges at work, you have, there are many demands upon you and the resources to meet those demands are not enough. You will be stressed, both physically and psychologically. So that kind of stress checks your mental health and pulls you towards poor mental health. So the coping mechanisms that we employ, is what helps protect us and take us back to proper mental health. Now, if the stresses are so much, or maybe they are prolonged and overwhelming and they are not going away, some people may not cope very well, or they may have what I call negative coping strategies. And in that state, they may be in a state of poor mental health for a long time. So if that happens, these persons are bound to develop mental illnesses, okay? And so mental illnesses are basically a condition that affects the brain, that present with changes in the way we feel, in the way we think, and the way we behave. So in other words, mental illnesses affect behavior, they affect our thoughts, and they affect our feelings in that regard. And so you're able to identify that this person has a mental illness or mental disorder, the way you would put it in that way. So that is the relationship between mental health and mental illness. So one thing that I want to make clear is that everybody has mental health. Yeah. It has always been stigmatized. Like once you talk about mental health, someone looks at the patient who is in Butabika or someone with very severe mental illness. But the fact is, the common mental illnesses are anxiety, depression, alcohol, and substance use. And who suffers these things are people like you and I. People who go to offices every day, people who go to work, and they have mental health challenges, and you know, that may amount to mental illnesses if found. How big is the burden? Generally, I'll put this globally, the statistics say that 1 in every 3 persons, or 1 in every 4 persons suffers a common mental illness, which is either anxiety disorder or depression. Okay. In Uganda, we don't have very clear statistics, so we've not done a survey that that can point out the burden or the prevalence of mental disorders in the country. But there are many researchers or scholars that have done a lot of researches, but most of these studies have been done in, you know, special populations. For example, if you assess the prevalence of mental illness in Butabika Hospital, is bound to be high. Or assess the prevalence of mental disorders in post-northern Uganda after the war, it's bound to be high. So generally, it's not representative of the entire country. But generally, the statistics that we use, some of them are the global burden of disease from the WHO, that also picks out depression and anxiety as the commonest mental disorders. And there was a survey done in the country about alcohol and substance use. It was called the STEPS survey. That was basically assessing the risk factors for NCDs, but alcohol being a major risk factor for NCDs, they went the length and you know, found out the prevalence.
NCDs meaning non-communicable
diseases, yeah. Okay. So they found the prevalence of alcohol use disorders to be at 9.8%, which in my opinion is an underestimate, because we know that 80% of people use substances and alcohol. That is unrecorded. So it's difficult to measure the quantity or how much they use. So generally, we also have the HMIS data, which brings out these statistics, meaning health management and information system, that is picked from Ministry of Health. And in this statistics, it points out, because of it's mostly hospital data, it points out that bipolar is the highest, bipolar affective disorder, which is a type of mental illness, is the highest mental illness that is in the hospital setting. You know, estimates so averaging about 52,000 cases per year. And then depression follows at about 36,000 cases per year. And anxiety follows with about 32,000 cases per year. So, but these, we've seen figures, these statistics are rising out of our support supervision, the visits and the reports we're getting from the hospitals because of the burden of COVID and the prevailing circumstances. The stresses are high and people are not coping well. And so this is checking our mental health, and people are tending towards poor mental health and developing mental illnesses, as I've explained.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me. Thanks a lot, Doctor. Let me bring in Janet at this time. Your organization deals a lot with direct, frequent contact with some of the patients, some of the persons who need help. How is it easy to tell from your organization and many others like yours, the frequency? Is it increasing? Is it at a stable, or is it going down? And are there some telltale, signs for maybe statisticians to tell that you see, in 2020 these were the figures, in 2022 these are the figures, and they may be growing or fluctuating?
Okay, thank you very much, Charles. Actually, from the people that we are receiving at safe places, there has been a very noticeable increase in the figures. Prior to COVID, that was around 2019, 2018, people would trickle in slowly. But currently, the number of people seeking help for depression, for anxiety, for basically issues relating to life changes that have come about because of the COVID pandemic, has increased. We are getting in more calls coming in for people coming in to seek help, which was not the case before. Before, people would not even come to the center for, they would want to stay that side, call and get the help from that side. And then someone would make an appointment and cancel it several times. But currently, people are calling and honoring their appointments. So definitely there has been an increase in the number of people seeking help. And that means there has been an increase in the number of people suffering from mental illness.
How do they present? Most of these people, do they, like you said, they make appointments and cancel? Are they being helped by some relative, friend, family member to reach out and therefore be helped with counseling? Or do they do it on their own, which would be interesting to know?
So, Charles, maybe I can just clarify. There's those people who are coming in on their own. Then there are those who have been helped by relatives, assisted by relatives to get the help. And both sides are increasing. The ones who are voluntarily coming in to seek help, and then the ones who are being brought without insight into their issues. But the family seeks the help for them on their behalf. So yes, those presenting, those ones who come voluntarily, those who come and seek the help and get the appointments done by themselves, are still at stages where they do not understand. The presenting issues, they do not understand the things that are happening to them. Someone will come and tell you, I do not know what is happening to me, but I think I need to speak to someone. That is someone who is at the stage where they feel like they're still in control of their life, but it's just going out of hand. But then we have those who are being brought in by relatives, and the person will insist they don't have a problem, but when their issues, that the symptoms they are presenting, when they are not well understood by the people that are around them. So those ones are also brought in, and also those numbers are increasing. Yes.
Interesting. Dr. Buku, you were the president of Uganda Medical Association, and often the association speaks a lot about the burden of disease, the rights of patients, of doctors, and health workers, and all that kind of thing. From your perspective, how big is the problem of mental health, and are we handling it right? What are the common drivers as a medical personnel, practitioner?
Medical politician. Because the correct medical technical person is a psychiatrist. Yes, and medical politics is very important. Yes. Very, very important, underrated, but very important. Yeah. So thank you so much. Of course, when you invited me, I was very excited. I've never been to this show, and I was very happy. I said, all right, I will come.
Thank you.
Of course,
Thank
to
you.
associate with the Biretes, but also yourself and these eminent Ugandans.
Thank you.
And you know, what attracted me was, you said, okay, what's the topic? Mental health. I said, but I'm not a psychiatrist. You said, you come. And I said, all right, as a Ugandan, I can also come and, you know, give you the Malwa talk. But I did some research.
Yeah.
And what attracted me behind the headlines is the title. Now, behind our smartness, you know, our smiles, our normal lives, very many people are actually ill. This is one thing we need to know. And the burden is underestimated. Is grossly underestimated because of many factors. One is our lifestyle, our culture. You know, if you say that I've gone to see a psychiatrist, my friend, the label, the stigma around that is, you know, can prevent someone from seeking help. So even when they are taking the statistics, that person will not be counted. Then certain things are against the law, isn't it? For example, suicide is a criminal act. You can correct me, your lawyers here. So that alone will discourage people from reporting it as a suicide, apart from bringing shame to society. It was a taboo in Africa, right? Then, looking at certain critical aspects of it, you know, if I searched, I said, let me look for the World Health Organization annual report on mental health. It was not there. I've been in the TB world, I've been in the HIV world. If you look for the HIV report, it's so big, appears every year. The global TB report appears, malaria report. I can tell you offhand what figures those are. But mental health, the data is scattered. All right? I found a certain source, but it was looking at only 34 countries. When you look at statistics on, if you look at the suicide map also is controversial. All right? So there is really no concerted, concentrated, comprehensive network which is agreed by all that this is how we should move forward and this is how we should report. That is one. Even at the WHO level, there is a plan. I've seen the action plan from 2015 to 2030 and so on. But when you look for the annual reports to look for the statistics, it's poor. So I ran to studies in special population groups. For example, medical students. There was a study recently published from Barara University, 500 students, medical students, yeah, and 20% of them had depression. And then about 15% had experienced the thought of committing suicide in the past 2 weeks. Right?
Among the students.
Among medical students. Now we know medical students are exposed to all these stress factors. So I would assume that health workers in the front line during COVID were in a war zone, seeing their colleagues die, see all these people were coming in despair, right? No oxygen and that kind of thing. Even if there is oxygen, the beds are just not enough, right? Then even after your discharge, the bill is 500 million. You know what I mean? So all of those factors even affected the health or the medical workers on the front line, so it should be higher. So definitely one of the biggest drivers has been COVID itself. The other big driver has been the lockdown effects. You know, the community quarantine. Very good to control COVID, very bad for mental wellness because you need to interact with the people. Those who are single, you know, they just kept themselves there, for instance, in urban areas, yeah? And then, of course, people discovered themselves. You have seen the husband and wife discover themselves after, you know, 21 days you must be together, right? Full time, 8 to 8, Monday to Monday. And we saw statistics from the police reports. Yeah, go up that the reports for sexual and gender-based violence, which is a form of also mental illness, came up. So those are some of the drivers. Recent economic effects. You heard the president himself saying, you go and eat cassava. So now, you know, when you do that, you make people lose hope. All right? They know they are on their own. That is a stress factor. When fuel is going up and the chief executive issues a statement which does not console people, some of these statements from the political perspective, they may make sense from the economic perspective, but how people receive that, because I can tell you, in my view, yes, in 1948, WHO defined health as, you know, all these characteristics, yeah? It must be total, and not merely the absence of what infirmity, meaning injury and so on, okay? But you know, you can say this, okay, health is wealth. isn't it? We all say health is wealth. A healthy population is a wealthy population. But there is no health without mental health. And in his statement, you would see WHO clarifying and saying, even if you don't have a mental illness, it does not mean you're mentally healthy. And therefore, I'm seeing as we move forward and we move towards the SDG, leave no one behind kind of idea, right? Then you are going to have to include the absence of financial stress as part of health. Poverty, in many ways, if you are poor, you are not healthy. And if you look at all the burden of mental illnesses, it's distributed in various. So let's look at suicide. Let's look at suicide. Can you imagine the most suicidal country is in Africa? There's a small country called Lesotho. Very suicidal. Followed by Zimbabwe, those southern African countries, then Mozambique. And it's not clear. Then you find Russia there. What explains Russia and Greenland is because, and the Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, in the 60s, was because they have very long, dark, their days are dark. The sunlight is very, so that contributed. Places like Japan, it's an honor. In fact, there's a mountain in Japan where people, so it can be a cultural thing where people just go to commit suicide. There's a mountain, it's like a tourist site, and so they have to keep police patrolling there. Then one of the drivers, very interesting patterns. You know, one of the drivers again, of for example, suicide in America, is the presence of guns. Actually, suicide is by gunshot. Is much more than homicide in the USA. You won't imagine. All right, so different factors, different places. And then, of course, the economic downturn, the financial crisis in Europe was correlated with increased suicide, for instance. And then the credit crunch in the USA and other countries was also correlated with suicide. So right now, I agree with my colleague Daktari that we are, and the two, of course, that we are probably experiencing the highest burden of mental illness in this country, given the 2 years of difficulty, you know, people are dying and so on, and then all of a sudden, you are getting this, this economic business, and finally, let me not forget our brothers and sisters who are fighting in the Congo. That area, that zone, just produces people. After that, there's something called post-traumatic stress disorder. Which is a form of mental illness, actually. And we just pray for them, and we hope they have that kind of team to look after their mental wellness. So I think those are some of the drivers I could mention offhand.
Okay, Sarah. I know how difficult it is when guys dealing with these issues. The technical guys have now led us into a corner, and but we need to look at the what can be the solutions, how big the problem is, and the attempts at working on solutions. From what you see, things like depression, anxiety, are these things that are easy to detect in your view? Are they things that we can say government can really put its hand on, and do statistics which, comprehensively as fast as possible to solve the problem? Is it really possible in your view?
Before I get to the possible solutions, I want to also have a say on where we as society and what are the drivers. During COVID, in one of the debates, we mentioned in passing that there are new mad people on the streets. So you would see somebody, sorry to use that word, really. That's the common word that we use, and I know it is not proper, it promotes stigma.
We shall understand.
Yes,
we shall. You are not
we shall change, yes. But you would see, you would be driving during the second lockdown. You see somebody, and you see somebody's still clean, a bit decently dressed, maybe with some shirt missing, and they are talking to themselves. And some of them, even just 2 days ago, I saw somebody mimicking, a mobile call, talking to themselves. And you look at them, I know that when we have extreme mental disorders, somebody has been staying on their own, moving around, meandering. At times you see somebody and you know he's been on the street for a while. And at times you look at a person and you're like, this one, I wish they could get some help and take him to the mental hospital. So during him or her. So during that second lockdown, every day you would meet somebody and say, this is the problem is, So we saw it happen unfold before our eyes. The situation Ugandans are going through. The drivers that Dr. Buku mentioned, you look at the economic stress that people are going through. 2 years of lockdown. As you get back and the economy is opening, you have the crisis of fuel, crisis of food, crisis of transport. Many people cannot make ends meet. People are struggling beyond. They are breaking down. Look at the social isolation that we went through during lockdown. The grieving, the loss of loved ones, the trauma. Somebody dies and hospitals are detaining dead bodies. What did we actually go through as society? I think it would be surprising if we didn't have this situation. Yeah. Because what did we experience during COVID? People losing, a family dying, a whole family, or so many people in a family, failure to meet medical costs, failure to even access. I remember the day the person who was in charge of COVID unit in Imbarara, the doctor who died. He's in charge of COVID unit. He was asthmatic. He's brought to Kampala and he was denied treatment in a private hospital. Emergency treatment because he didn't have money. We all experienced trauma as a nation. And unfortunately, there were no mitigating factors. So we come out of easing of lockdown, we are in another trauma, economic trauma as a country. And then of course, as the book says, the hopelessness. I saw recently somebody was saying, please, as much as you are doing nothing about the situation, reduce on the arrogance. Yeah. You see people that are supposed to give hope to a population, speaking arrogantly on how they can't do anything. So what do you expect of the people? What are the people consuming? From the 2 years of COVID, the economic hardship, people are sleeping hungry, a head of a family with no food for 1 week, half of the children are not in school, the term is going into 1 month. If you are a head of a family, would you be mental okay? You can't. So it would be surprising if we didn't have this situation. What can be done? We need responsible leadership. The true character of a leader is not determined in moments of comfort and convenience. This is the time for Uganda to know whether they have true leadership or not. This is what people are going through. And what are the leaders doing? Nothing. And on top of doing nothing, they talk arrogantly to the people, the suffering people.
Are they doing nothing? I thought they are doing something except maybe...
Whatever they are doing, can they find a way of talking? Even the way they are communicating does not make sense to an ordinary person.
Except maybe on the lighter note, but how about your thinking that they are also all fine in capacity? Even our MPs went through the same trauma.
I just wanted to add, just to chip in that, just on that one.
On that one. This is a national problem. So we should look at the entire
Spectrum.
Spectrum.
Yeah, and
don't think that MPs or our leaders
are spared.
Okay.
They are also traumatized.
Even me, when I ask questions and I sound funny,
you are traumatized.
Please sympathize with me.
And we start the diagnosis. Charles.
Even MPs, when they make laws and you don't agree with it and they look unusual, also sympathize with them. Because put them also in the same basket. Let's first look at the entire basket called Uganda.
I just wanted to chip in just a bit.
Yes.
You know, mental health or mental illness, and it can be caused by, we can look at the extremes, generally speaking, the extremes. Extreme poverty, and, you know, extreme powerlessness, right? But also extreme wealth, and too much power. There's some form of mental illness there, you know, these grandiose feelings and this mania, and you know, sometimes it comes with the drug use, abuse. You get, all these. So yes, you could be right that sometimes we are always thinking of the poor, the rural folk. But also, as I said, behind the headlines, it can also be behind the suits in the parliament. People are not okay.
Because I was reading, and you know, substance abuse. Actually, I was reading some document. I don't know whether from Butabika Hospital or something, but it is a credible publication, and that. You know, many times we think that those of us who wear suits are saved from these problems. No. In fact, majority, let me not say majority, I don't have that those statistics. In fact, I'm told that from experience, many of those who suffer from bipolar situations, from abusing drugs, the drugs are expensive, so they have actually to be people who wear suits. They are people actually who are in offices. I can actually dare say, was it in the 10th or 11th Parliament, there were real, you know, attempts to help situations when, you know, quietly it was discovered that there were some food vendors who would pack things that looked like food, but they were deliveries of certain other substances to our, you know, our lawmakers. That was, you know, we got those information, but you know, unofficially, but within the corridors of Parliament, in the boardrooms, you see. So it is not. We shouldn't assume that it is only a problem of the poor. The rich and the powerful suffer from it as much. But I want to, Doctor, I know you're itching to come in, but I want to bring on Honorable Mapenduzi. I'm told on the you're very clear. You've been listening to the discussion your colleagues are having here. And we needed to pick your brain at this moment and share with us some experiences from your perspective. You had earlier indicated how you were surprised with how our neighbors, the Kenyans, are also dealing with a similar situation of mental health in Kenya, and how they are trying to help mitigate, reverse, you know, the indices. Share with us some of those experiences.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. And just as I said at the start, I want to greet the people on this program this evening. But also let me begin by touching on just 2 or 3 things that were said by the people who spoke before, especially those that came from Dr. Obuku, and then briefly what came from Dr. Sarah Birete. Madam Sarah Birete said leaders seems not to be doing anything, and I want to disagree. In as far as mental health is concerned, I think From what I have seen and what we are doing as Parliament, there are a lot of efforts being made. And I'm sure you are aware that Parliament of Uganda enacted a law. We have the mental health bill. You're also aware that we have been having lots of discussions. I'm sure Dr. Kenneth can agree with me that the leadership of Parliament, the current leadership of Parliament, is very much committed to doing what it takes in supporting the efforts to make sure mental health is given a lot more attention. There have been lots of interactions, and including members of Parliament stepping forward and actually fully associating themselves with the efforts. And just to let you know that for the first time, the 11th Parliament of Uganda has 248 members of Parliament on the Parliamentary Forum on Mental Health. And that demonstrates the level of commitment. But you see, being on that forum and the level of commitment should be translated into actions, and these actions should be reflected in the manner in which we appropriate funds. I'm sure you're aware that to this day, little money is still given towards mental health. I think to this day, we have maybe just about 6% of the total budget of the health sector going towards mental health. 1%. And that's the challenge.
It is actually 1%.
0.7.
0.7?
It is actually 1%, I'm told, the latest.
Well, then I'm not sure whether it's 1% as such, but from the information I have is that about 6% has been but even if it's 6% or 1, it's extremely little and cannot do much. And so that calls for a lot of our work as Parliament of Uganda to make sure that we use the number that we have got in making sure that we put the resources needed to support the efforts towards mental health. And Charles, it's tough because when you look at the kind of support that government is giving, Uganda has about 150 specialists in the mental health sector. When we look at Kenya has about 500 specialists, and 500 specialists dealing with a population of about 50 million, while Uganda has about 150 specialists dealing with a population of about 45 million or so. And so that tells you how much we need to do. But also when you look at the level of services that we offer as a country, there is definitely need to do much better. And here I am looking at number one, services available, but also number two, how those services are utilized. And then we also have to look at systems that are in place in terms of strengthening coordination. And so there are definitely challenges that we have to deal with. And also from the legislative perspective, just like Dr. Buku put it, in Uganda, when somebody tries to commit suicide, it's criminal, and you are taken to court and you end up in prison. And so when you look at that, it's as if as a country we are trying to criminalize sickness, because someone who tries to commit suicide is definitely not okay. And so we should treat that as a disease but not as a crime. And so there are things that we have to do from a legislative point of view, but also from implementation level. There are a lot of work that has to be done. The Mental Health Act that we have requires that mental health services should be integrated up to the level of primary health care. But when you see right now we have at national referral level, we have mental health services given, then at regional referral hospital, and then at district hospital. Unlike in a country like Kenya, where it goes much lower than that. And so it means a lot in terms of how the population can access these services. Now, I'll tell you very briefly my experience here. Of course, I have seen the level of commitment in Kenya. I think they're doing a great job. Yes, as a country, as Uganda, we are trying our best, but there is a lot to learn from our neighbors, including Kenya. And when you see what is going on in Kenya, actually, we have had very many meetings. I've had a meeting with the presidential advisor on mental health, Dr. Njenga. We have had a meeting with the Kenya Psychiatry Association and different other people. But also, we have had lots of interaction with members of parliament, especially one of the members of parliament, Honorable Sylvia, who brought a private member bill to amend the law, Mental Health Act of Kenya. And so there are a lot of things that are going on, but you see how different people are coming together. I am also seeing this in Uganda because I'm seeing different players coming together, civil society and all that in Uganda, which is good. It's very encouraging and we have to do much more. But also the same thing is happening here, but I think Kenya has a lot more that we can learn from. But I will tell you something that I experienced. Interestingly, I found out that there are so many people who come from Uganda to get mental health services here in Kenya. And when you try to find out why they are coming, why so many people come, two answers come very prominent. Number one, it's about the quality of services. And so we need to learn a lot. What do we do to make sure that the services we give in Uganda actually can make our people have confidence and they know when they go to get support, they can get it. But also the second problem that I have seen, and this is from the responses I get from some of the people who are attending to our people traveling from Uganda, coming to Kenya to get treatment, is that people fear so much that, it should not be known about their condition. There is a lot of secrecy. Now, when you ask yourself why people do not want what they are going through to be known out, then you know in Uganda, we have a big problem of, stigmatization. So we need to deal with that. And I'll refer you to the comment you just made a few minutes ago. And Dr. Buku said members of parliament are traumatized and all that. And doctor, you need to treat that as a disease. If members of parliament are traumatized and they have things that are similar to mental health, cases and all that, we need to begin looking at that from a different perspective. But because we make statements that appear to be stigmatizing so there is a lot of fear. Those who should get out to access services feel, they want to hide behind because there is a lot of stigma going on. And so we need to do a lot as a country to create awareness. One beautiful thing that has happened in Kenya, almost about 50% of the population know about mental health issues, and they go voluntarily, all right? They go voluntarily to access these services. And the other thing that I have seen, which I have equally seen in Uganda, but I think Kenya is doing a lot more, is that, private people are coming to establish facilities. We visited one very powerful facility, which is actually at the level of, at the level 5. And this is called Kirabo Group of Hospitals. And I'm told it's one of the best private health facilities providing mental health services in the East and Central Africa. Doing a lot, but there are so many other private facilities that are doing that, and they work very closely with government. And so we also need to see how we can support those who are in the private sector who are coming up to establish, such facilities to support the population. So there is a lot that we have to learn. And the other thing that is equally key, and I'll share with you this, is that in Kenya, I think the commitment at government level is much more than what we have in Uganda. And that is partly why we have a very highly qualified individual at the level of presidential advisor on mental health, Dr. Njenga, doing an excellent job. And I'm actually told, because in our interactions, he was able to mention so many Ugandans that he has been able to train. And so we need, as a country, Uganda needs to do much more. in supporting the Minister of Education, but also supporting those who are involved. And it's also about recruiting more people. Like, one thing you need to understand is that in Uganda, people who have mental, illness are attended to by psychiatrists. But in Kenya, it's taken holistically. It's you find someone who needs a mental health support is attended to by a psychiatrist, but also there is a psychology, and so it's looked at holistically. I think there is much that we need to do. This is a learning process, but as Parliament, we are very much committed to seeing that we support the processes, we support those who are involved, we support the Minister of Health, so we provide the resources needed, and my hope is that those in the front line will do what it takes to make sure they give the services to the country. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. That's very interesting. We will come back to you, Honorable Mapenduzi, for more sharing. But Janat, he talks about holistic handling of the challenge and mentions, even psychologists coming in to help, maybe counselors. What is the level of interaction, cooperation between you and the guys who are actually the medics, the trained psychiatrists? How do you relate to ensure that there is that attempt to achieve the holistic care for these patients? Or can they be correctly called victims, or they are patients? Patients is a good enough. Okay. Okay. I am sorry. I will definitely oblige.
So I like that was a submission about holistic care, because I was actually noting that down when he was speaking. Because at the end of the day, we are treating one person. We are treating a person not because a person needs a psychiatrist, but a person needs an intervention, a behavioral and medical intervention. So in the clinical setting, definitely psychologists have to work with psychiatrists and counselors. They see the person from the biomedical bit of it, then we do the psychotherapy, and then we have a holistic care for that person. Okay. So for taking my case in private setting, definitely we are doing that. We have psychiatrists and we are very synchronized in the care that we give the patients. However, I will also go back to the national status, that psychologists and counselors are not yet recognized in the public service scheme of service. We even do not have a body where we belong as psychologists and counselors.
You are not even allied
We are not in allied, we are not in medical and dental.
You are on your own.
We are on our own. And that is one battle we've been trying to, fight. Not really a battle, but that is one way we've approached the ministry, and we've told them that we need to belong. We can do much more than just be there. We need to give people the confidence that actually there is talk therapy. There is psychotherapy. There are other psychosocial services that we can give. We do not have to rely on the 53 psychiatrists that we have in Uganda.
The whole Uganda has 53.
Are those in the national referral hospitals?
And they must be, I think 90% must be in Kampala.
Are those in the national setup, national hospitals?
So many of them are in the universities.
Okay, so it's a total of all trained.
Yeah, all trained.
And those who have even retired.
Yeah, 53.
So
including retired?
The retired ones.
So each psychiatrist has to attend to about 400,000 Ugandans.
No. Actually, Mastiko alone has 500 beds. It is
supposed to be 550 bed capacity,
but have more.
Last year they hit the 1,000 mark of patients, so it's overflowing.
Wow.
Yeah.
But there are other cadres, the psychiatric clinical officers, psychiatric nurses,
innovative,
who can support this system. But indeed, there are very few psychiatrists. But the bulk of, in my view, the bulk of mental illness can be sorted at the primary health care level, through prevention, promotion, and so on. And let me give you an example. I visited Dakar, I think in 2019 January. And we were walking, Dakar is on the ocean, right?
Yes.
So we were walking there at the beach, and you'd see just ordinary citizens. There were open gyms for anybody. Just open gyms for like a kilometer. You know, and you see these Dakarians, you know, doing that kind of, you know, physical activity made available to play. Adults are playing after work. Keeps them busy, away from drugs, away from crime, and this kind of thing. Those kinds of things need to be available in communities. Of course, that looks very sophisticated for this. This is tell someone in Lira that we are building an open gym. Say, for what? I first need a Porsche.
First, you know, the hospital and the school.
I first need cassava, then a school, a uniform, and things like that. So I just wanted to mention that there are other cadres, but indeed there are very, very few psychiatrists. And you know, psychiatrists are at the end. They are like lieutenant generals or full generals, right? In a war, those tend to be few in an army. They throw the commands, but they handle also the complicated cases. You know, these admissions and that kind of thing, schizophrenia. The psychotic will tell you what you call extreme madness. You know, Sarah was saying, this extreme madness or something like that. So those complicated cases, then you have to see him. You can see when he has spectacles so that he can see you properly. Because he has to figure out what exactly is disturbing you. Yeah.
But either way, even with other cadres, the ratio of the healthcare service provider to the patients in Uganda is still very, very low.
Very low, yeah.
Yes.
That's true.
And just like the Honorable was talking about the support to private entities that are trying to come up to provide private healthcare, you know, so that we can also complement the services of government. You know, it's not that it's only government that has to offer those services. So if there were mechanisms that could at least support those in existence already that are trying to offer these services, at the end of the day, we just need Ugandans healthy.
Yeah, that's most important. Dr. Kenneth, you know, when the Mental Health Act 2019, right? 2020 or 2019? 2019. Mental Health Act 2019. Is it doing anything better than we used to have, the situation we used to have? Has it improved on any of these things that your colleagues are talking about? Or is it just an act for the sake of making an act? Is it capable of helping put in place the kind of solutions that Honorable Mapinduzi is sharing with us from the other across border in Kenya here?
Okay. So the act is a very progressive act, I think I should say. It came into force in February 2021. Yeah, so it's relatively a new act here. And up until last year, we were still, mental health services were being governed by the Act of 1964. Yeah, which mostly focused on institutionalizing of patients. I was looking at mentally ill patients should be locked up in an institution, and you know, the community is literally saved from the burden of the mentally ill, which was a different way of looking at it. And then it also used derogatory and condescending terms such as imbecile, such as persons of unsound mind, such as stupid, you know, to refer to the people I know as patients. Mental illnesses.
We have unsound mind in the Constitution.
And we are going to have to adjust that again because this act repeals.
For the highest office, you must be of sound mind.
No, you are going to adjust that as well because this act repeals the Act of 1964.
But the act cannot repeal the Constitution.
No, the act of the other, and so maybe we can make it better. And then so what this act now brings, the new act of 2019, it is, as Honorable Mapinduzi points out, it provides for provision of mental health services at primary health care level. So that means, and in Uganda, mental health services are integrated into primary health care. Okay, this is as a policy. Okay.
But not in reality.
But it's not in practice.
Yeah, but it's not in practice.
It's just on the book.
So, but now this act mandates, and of course we shall act upon that to ensure that primary healthcare workers are trained. As it stands, these primary healthcare workers are actually trained on mental health, because mental health is seen as one of the illnesses that people suffer from. So the nurses, the doctors, everyone, there is a model, and he will tell you that the young doctors rotate, or they have a time where they are trained on mental illness.
Health,
yes.
yeah.
But because of the practice, and mental illness is largely seen as a specialized discipline, okay? So that means the people who have mental illnesses will be quick to refer patients to Butabika Hospital or the regional referral hospital that has a mental health unit. But the fact is, we can never have enough mental health specialists to treat the mentally ill patients that we have. And so what do? We want to bank on the primary healthcare workers, because the problem, mental illness, is in the community. Okay, the people that we pick at the regional referral hospital, national referral hospital, are people who are severely ill. But for example, depression and anxiety, because of the stigma, because of the alternative explanations related to mental ill health, people will not openly talk about their problems. And what will happen, that psychological pain that they have will be transformed into a physical pain. And so they will present with backache, they will present with symptoms that are very confusing to the general doctor. And they keep running all sorts of tests. People with, for example, panic attacks or anxiety disorder come in with palpitations, the heart is beating so fast, the feeling of losing breath. So they come in and they say, I have a heart attack. And the primary doctor will, investigate, and sometimes they put them even on medication for heart attack, so to say, and yet they actually have an anxiety disorder. So what this act will help us do is to train these primary healthcare workers, do in-service training, such that they are able to identify and at least provide basic care and refer. What we want is identification. So if they can, they provide basic care and refer. And we've made some strides in that as well, in terms of training, providing in-service training to primary healthcare workers. Another thing that this act comes with.
Yes. A quick question, Doctor.
Yes.
The act provides for the mental health department at the referral hospitals.
Yes.
But have you been able to recruit the heads of these departments for all the referral hospitals in Uganda?
So there are 13 regional referral hospitals in the country. And out of 13 regional referral hospitals, 6 out of the 13 have psychiatrists. Okay? And the other 7, it's not because there are no psychiatrists. It's not because they have not recruited, but it's because the psychiatrists actually not there to take up the positions. We are happy that we are training more, and now that this year and the other year we have some other new psychiatrists that have come up, we are going to ensure that they actually absorb and take up those positions. Like last year, they advertised, and nobody took up the positions because the psychiatrists were actually not there to cover these positions.
Can I ask how many psychiatrists do you have in northern Uganda, for example?
Northern Uganda, I can just point out one. Arua has a psychiatrist. Gulu, because it's the teaching hospital, it has a number. I think it has 3 psychiatrists, but that is for the university.
I'm asking that in terms of looking at the problem, because the paradox actually, and the irony that most of the earlier, even when the ED of Butabika came here, and you also point out the same, that whilst most past statistics have said that northern Uganda was one of those areas because of the prolonged war that had a major problem of mentally, ill cases. then there are fewer doctors or handlers that side, you know. But let's so
but again,
I wanted to point out that paradox. We will discuss it when we come back from the break. My technical team are pointing to me and saying that it's time for the break. So let's
I didn't finish my point.
When I come back, I will give you the space to start first, and then we will come to the rest.
Okay.
But let's when we come back, let's keep the discussion now more interactive, and feel free to interject here and there, but with some respect, of course, for each other. Let's go for the break. We will be back shortly.
Jennifer, Jukila, Lewagamba, I don't have waka. You pass the eyes through me about my waka. Now come and see for yourself, see my waka that I got with Momo Nyabo. Jambola be waka, look at you waka, see my waka.
Simply deposit 20K or more on your mobile money for a chance to win 3 Toyota Succeeds and money to 2,000 lucky winners every week. We're giving away 24 cars and over 2 billion shillings of mobile money.
Affordable packages, great entertainment, sports, local content, telenovela, the movies. There is something for everybody. Go TV, this is where our best stories live.
Get the best entertainment for any budget. With GoTV, you will have great entertainment for as little as 13,000 Ugandan shillings per month. GoTV, great stories, Zidiwano. GoTV Uganda, love it.
Fun is our flavor. When we're together, the vibe is pretty alright. Our taste is pretty awesome. We are Uganda's #1 fruity refreshment. Enjoy Mirinda Fruity, Uganda's #1 fruity refreshment.
Jennifer, Jukila, Lewagamba, I don't have waka. You pass the eyes through me about my waka. Now come and see for yourself, see my waka that I got with Momo Nyabo. Jambola be waka, look at you waka, see my waka.
Simply deposit 20K or more on your mobile money for a chance to win 3 Toyota Succeeds and money to 2,000 lucky winners every week. We're giving away 24 cars and over 2 billion shillings of mobile money. Are you a player in the tourism sector with a struggling business following the COVID pandemic? UDB, in partnership with European Union, is providing financial assistance to businesses operating in the tourism sector. You can access subsidized loan with grants, loan with a tenor of up to 5 years, free business advisory services, and free environmental impact assessment. Visit www.udbl.co.ug/call for applications to apply. Deadline for submission is 31st October 2022 at 5 p.m. For more information, please call 0414 355 509.
Be a Alert! Do not share your Airtel Money PIN number with anyone. Airtel Uganda employees will never ask for your Airtel Money PIN number on call, SMS, or by email. All SIM card registrations, SIM card verifications, or SIM swaps are done at clearly branded Airtel shops and not on phone. To report any fraudulent activity, please call 100 immediately. The official calling number for Airtel promotions is 0200 100 100. Stay alert on Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
Welcome back from the break. This is Behind the Headlines, and we are discussing the mental health problems in Uganda, and we're asking ourselves how big the problem is across the country. What solutions can we get? Are there things that can be put in place to mitigate the problem? With me in the studio, I have Dr. Kenneth, Dr. Obuku, there is Janat, a psychologist, a counselor. Then we have Counsel Sarah Birete in the studio. But on the line from Nairobi on Zoom, we have Honorable Mapenduzi Ojara, who is a panelist here. Before we went to for the break, the floor was held by Dr. Kenneth. I'm going to give him back the floor, save for there is a very interesting message someone has just written here to spice up this discussion. So this guy Ogutu sends a message and says, "Good evening, Charles." Then he says, "According to New Vision, 40 million people have mental illness. That's approximately 30%. Meaning where 3 or more people are seated together, there is a likelihood that one is a mental case." I am seeing 5 of you in the studio. I am seeing 5 of you in the studio, and I'm worried we might hear 1 or 2 special disabilities in that studio. 14 million is a big number. We basically need to avoid crowds. And with these hard economic times, the number is likely to reach 20 million. You see, your boss may be shouting at you, and you think he's just bad-mannered, yet he's a special case. Now, my suggestion is government should make it mandatory to have every civil servant to undergo thorough medical checkup. Thank you. Now, now he puts it in a very cheeky manner, but isn't he expressing a very poignant, point? Isn't he making a very serious suggestion, or is that against medical ethics to say we need to start, testing people and perhaps even monitoring closely how people relate, how people respond, how people react to each other, so that these situations don't go out of hand?
So I think he raises a very pertinent question, but again, that is not the way I could look at mental illness. Yeah. So he puts it in a very...
Are you seeing some symptoms?
He puts it in a very tricky way, but ultimately it's a stigmatizing statement. That is something that we are here to normalize.
This guy should not be stigmatizing us.
No, we should normalize mental health and mental illness, and look at mental illness like any disease. You see, as one could have a disease affecting the liver, could have a disease affecting the kidney. Mental illness is a disease that affects the brain. Okay, and again he equates mental illness with inability to work or perform. Okay, that is also a problem, because I can have my mental illness, but I can be able to perform and work. And we don't want, we must create that distinction very well. Okay, yeah. And that's what this act brings. It gives the rights, you know, in the past, once you have a mental illness, they take away rights from you. Rights, for example, to manage your estates, you know, rights to choose what treatment you get or not, because people equate mental illness with mental incapacity or to make rights and decisions.
But to what extent should we go to protect society from adverse actions? I can give examples.
Yeah.
Some of them might not be palatable to some people, but let's look at, first of all, there is also in the law, I think, whenever there are certain actions that people do, you find the courts are saying, let's subject this person to a mental checkup, and they have been common recently. And before the case moves on its own merit, you see that test is still
the mental wellness of the person.
And then
but
in
also
some professions,
insanity is a defense. It's a defense to all criminal cases.
Exactly. In law, insanity is a defense to all criminal cases.
So why should people ignore?
Yes. And then can you just say, because medically you want to protect a person
from stigma,
that you must just leave a person who is moving with a gun on the prowl, and you say this person is okay, we are just going to handle him or her normally, when you see them actually going for the trigger and they spray an entire population? Where must the and then also in even lawmaking, let's take examples even of lawmaking, must we just let someone who is really moving an act that you really see is crazy for the country, that because we are protecting their medical, where do we draw the line? I'm just asking that.
In addition, and unrelated to what Charles is saying, you know, there are some constitutional offices where you must be of sound mind, and I think the framers of the Constitution really mean well. Some people take decisions that could cause people to lose lives. For example, signing death warrants. So when do you know if somebody has symptoms of mental illness? When do you know or predict that they are okay or they are not? Because symptoms keep manifesting and changing. And as in society deserve to be protected.
The bigger society. The interest of the bigger public.
So this is it, that if you have reasons to suspect, because mental illness is affects our behavior, and as I say, it affects our thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So behavior is what we see, and many times it's because of the behavior that will cause the society to suspect that someone has a mental illness, because of the changes in behavior, and I'm using my words carefully, changes in behavior. And so if there are grounds to believe that someone is deviating from what was called from the norm, they present that patient to the doctor for assessment. Unfortunately, mental illness, unlike malaria or HIV, where you go and run a test and it's either red or not, that is not there with mental illnesses. So we carry on some objective and subjective tests, including interacting with a patient, and we call that clinical examination. So the doctor determines, and once the doctor writes, the psychiatrist or the mental health worker determines that this person is unwell for now, okay, and maybe they can get treatment, that so be it. But the intention is that people can get treatment and they can go back to their previous level of functioning before they got the mental illness.
They can recover.
They can recover. Okay?
Depending
I
on-
don't want to use the word recover because
Is it a lifetime?
It's recurring.
I don't want.
Recurrent illness, or it can come and be cured, like malaria, for example.
So there are very many types of mental illnesses, and that determines which one recovers and some doesn't. But sometimes we use the word recover differently. Like if we even restore some degree of function in the patient. For example, some patients can have very severe mental illness that our target is just to restore some degree of function, that they are able to take care of themselves, run their daily lives, and there we can say that this patient is recovering. Yes. But then there are some patients who changed, and then we treat them and they go back to their normal level of function.
And it does not reoccur.
Yes, some may not reoccur, others may need medicine in order to keep them stable. They take treatment for a long time in order to keep them stable in that regard. Yes, that is chronic.
There are some cases where, now let me give, without mentioning or citing cases, are there some situations where, based on what has caused the illness, that the person will be made to take maybe medicine forever? I have seen situations where people abuse drugs, and then a small intake of alcohol, just excites the situation again.
Yeah.
And in such cases, must they be put permanently on medication, or so that the abuse is suppressed, or do you aim at removing that abuse, which from psychologists, which is usually harder to achieve?
Yeah. So to answer your question, I'll just go back to what I would want to call not the causes of mental illnesses. Okay. So what causes mental illness? There is no single cause of a mental illness, but it's rather an interaction of factors. For example, biological causes, psychological and social causes. Okay, so I'll give an example of if one has a biological predisposition. For example, they have a genetic possibility of having a mental illness because one of their parents maybe had a mental illness. Okay, so they have an offspring with a possibility of having a mental illness because it has been inherited in one of the genes. Okay, now if that person interacts with a very adverse society, poverty, this current stress, and that it will bring out the mental illness. And that's why me and you, we can be subjected to the same adverse situation, but I develop a mental illness and you do not develop a mental illness because of the interaction of those factors. Now, as general guidance, patients with genetic predisposition may get mental illnesses earlier in life, and sometimes they're more difficult to treat than patients who don't have genetic predisposition. So maybe, for example, for me, I got depression because of generally the situation has been tough, and I've been stressed to the point that I got a depression. Maybe my wife left me, and I know that that's a stressor. It's common for me just to talk to the psychologist to help me cope and deal with that stress, and sometimes may even not need medication to deal with that mental illness. But if it is ingrained in your genes, okay, because you carried it forwards, and maybe it came early in life when you're still young, when the brain was still developing, the treatment outcomes are poorer in that regard. Okay, and those are the factors that determine who takes treatment for life, who takes treatment for a short time, and who takes and stops. But there are things like drug holiday. We give people medicine holiday because we've treated them for some time, depending on how they present. If someone has an obvious social stressor, that we take it away, we modify the stress or help them become stronger to deal with these stresses better, and they will manage the mental illness in that way without even needing pills. But there are other very severe ones where they need treatment in order for them to remain stable in that regard. So it's a spectrum.
Good.
Yeah.
Janet, are there cases, are they common if they're there, where you know, patients come in and out, you know, like recurring challenges. Are they there? You know what?
I actually think, you know, Dr. Kenneth has said that we have those who recover, but the number of those who recover and do not need to keep on medication, even with different conditions, are less. Most of them are recurring disorders.
Wow.
Okay, that a person can go on medication for a while. When they get the holiday, then if other stressors or the same stressors come back, then the person needs to, you know, go back onto the medication and then be handled like that.
Wow.
Okay, so most of them, even what you're talking about before, substance use. Yes, that there is no pill that I'll give you that now I've given you a pill that now you can stop, stop, and then when you can take one beer and then go back and, you know, no. If you go back to the same substance that you took, then you will go back into the disorder.
Wow.
It is not that you'll stop and then, you know, use responsibly. No, that is not possible, at least. So you cannot say that I will control after you have been diagnosed with a substance use disorder. You know, there is a difference between a substance use disorder and abusing the substance. You know, once it has been categorized as a substance use disorder, then you have a problem with that substance. Like, there's no way you'll be, you know, fraternizing with it in a safe way. Okay, it has become a disease to you.
Yeah, yes, it is dangerous to you when you get into contact with it.
Yes. So the only thing you can do is take away the substance.
Yeah.
Because it is now that is bringing the issue. Just like if it's a stressing issue that is putting you into depression or giving you anxiety, take away the stressor, and then you can have the person in a better recovery position. Yes, position.
Wow.
So generally, the treatment is multidimensional.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
and not just medicine.
But what I wanted also to make a follow-up on.
Yes.
I ordinarily, locally, on the streets, we have had this situation where some people propose that when someone is an addict of smoking, or mostly they talk about it in relation to smoking, that there are some pills that if you give them, mix it with milk or something, that they will stop smoking. I had situations where people said that, and my disclaimer is that these are very local, you know, testimonies, that when you drop a cigarette, a stick of cigarette in raw milk, and then you let it dry, and when it is dry, you apply. That when you give it to someone who is an addict of smoking, that they will stop smoking completely.
It will become tradition.
Does it exist?
Maybe before it comes in, I don't know about that milk, but I know that maybe the idea they have is there is some form of aversive treatment. I would want to say aversive treatment as a way of treating alcohol use. There is medicine that can be given to someone, and then if they take the alcohol, the side effects of hangover are exaggerated. So they vomit, they feel very bad, and so it discourages them from taking the alcohol.
But doesn't stop them.
But doesn't stop them. So, but again, these things come with a lot of training. We teach them, and and we create the willingness.
African intervention.
No.
On that specific point of sort of finding alternatives, I remember when I was a practicing HIV clinician in the US. I'll talk about the US. They discovered that many of those who get HIV either abuse drugs, including injection drug use, so they would introduce programs of giving them clean needles so they can continue but with safe needles. So you work within their their needle replacement, I think, they're called needle replacement programs. But also, you may correct me, I think for those who are abusing drugs, they found alternative prescription drugs to give them so that they leave the hard stuff. So that happens, but it's very sophisticated. It's very sophisticated.
That usually happens
in
the clinical setting.
I know someone who is really a chain smoker.
Yeah.
And including when they're in office, they are working, they want to smoke, and they gave the person
electronic
something, like a roundish, just small piece of stone, but it is a kind of substance. They put it under the tongue.
Maybe it's tobacco.
It is actually
nicotine. It may be tobacco. But also you have
it takes away the urge.
It takes away the urge of smoking, but I'm told it also has some substance.
I've also seen electronic cigarettes and things like that.
Yes, there are e-cigarettes, there are patches,
and so
there
so they
are alternatives.
So what you say, because for example, if you talk about tobacco, okay, there is tobacco, but tobacco as a cigarette has very many carcinogens and other toxins that actually cause the health hazard or health effect. But what causes the addiction and what causes the craving for an individual is actually the nicotine. So what they do in order to, and they call that nicotine replacement therapy. Of course, after talking to the person and assessing their willingness to quit the substance, they give that patch. It can be a gum, it can be a patch or something put under sublingual.
But it also
something.
works with attitude change.
It is, it works with attitude change. So they design for your program, and the intention is to reduce the withdrawal symptoms, because what takes these people back or what causes them to relapse is the unpleasant withdrawal symptoms. It comes with a lot of irritability, jitteriness, loss of appetite, poor sleep, and so on and so forth. So once you have that, but they keep reducing the dose in a program, and they are also building your motivation to quit while doing
let
that.
me help you.
It helps.
It is being a psychiatrist. It's why I said withdrawal symptoms. It's very complicated out there. When you stop, when you stop all of a sudden smoking and you've been smoking for 10 years, when you stop booze and you'll be taking a high dose, right? Then you start getting what I would call side effects of stopping. You get what I mean? There are side effects of stopping. You get all these derangements.
In a good way,
You are irritated. You are not comfortable. So you are urged to go back, and I'm told this is in the dopamine receptors.
Yes.
So some
it affects
some cells
many,
they are tuned to the booze. But I wanted to bring back very important issues you made. You left me out in the discussion.
Bring yourself back.
Very important. You mentioned them. There are studies which have been done in the CEOs. In the CEOs who make important decisions. And actually they are mentally ill. The challenge is these people are so powerful. How do you approach them? All right?
They don't know that they are mentally
They may
ill.
not know. But even if they know, for example, if they have this mania, you know mania?
Yes.
They can spend, they can make this decision, they can do all this. It
Almost
comes with the power.
almost like superiority complex.
Yes, it comes with the power and comes with the money. You can have a surgeon who's mentally ill, but he's handling patients.
As he was talking, I thought, what if the person himself is mentally ill?
That
How
is
will he know?
assessing.
Yes, you can have a psychiatrist who is mentally ill. So there are these delicate positions, and they are handling delicate life, and therefore they are masked in my view. I don't know. But what you suggested made sense, that for some critical positions, it would be important to conduct annual medical checks, including mental health checks. Why? Imagine the guy holding the nuclear bomb bag in the US. We see it in the movies. I don't know whether in reality it happens. But imagine that character. Imagine someone who wants to declare war. Imagine our fountain of honor was not okay. How do you approach him? Not that he should be removed, but to be helped.
But even according to the constitution, he should be removed.
Okay, let's say because now we are going modern, as you say, to be helped, so that they are given what?
Actually,
medical support.
You're going very far. If we have a head of family who has a problem, and the family members realize that this person has a problem, they find it very difficult we get, we've encountered such cases where the children are trying to get their father into care. And they don't know how to approach.
Because of the power relations at home is the one providing. How do you start saying, you know what I mean? Now, the other important point I wanted to mention is that there is self-help. There is self-help, especially all of us who have these smartphones, you know, and you can get an app. For example, a colleague of mine, it's called Professor Kenyena Dickens. He developed something called the AVD scale. Just go online and check whether you can check whether you have some level of depression. It's called the Akena Visual Inventory for Depression and so on and so forth. It's online, AVD 18. You check, and it shows pictures in the African sense. He tried to Africanize all of these things out there because they are advanced. There's a CESLA, whatever, those things I learned in medical school. I think that's an important thing for people to know in terms of raising awareness, those of us who have apps. Now, if I were a Minister of Health, I've been listening to the discussion, and many times we say, ministry is not giving enough money. But sometimes I ask myself, now I'm Minister of Health, they have given me $1 million. When you go to finance, my experience, which I was made aware when I was president of the Medical Association, when you go to finance, they'll say, those Ministry of Health people, they don't know how to prioritize. But they give them a fixed amount of money. Economists will tell you these things are not... appetites are infinite. You know what I mean? You can spend whatever you want. So they fix it, they say you prioritize. So I quickly looked at the annual health sector performance report, and I said, okay, how do people prioritize diseases? There are diseases which kill. Like now all the money at one point was going to COVID. You get no new research money on HIV, it's in COVID. Because COVID so far has killed 6 million, globally. So I looked at the top 20 causes of death. I can tell you, there was no any mental illness like suicide or anything. So economists who are planning will give money according to those which cause death. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, then I realized that behind the headlines, there could be something going on. Isn't it? Because I said, what are those diseases which actually go with the mental health? And I counted 6, and they kill about 5,000. TB, hypertension, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, asthma, stroke, cancer. They are there, they are among the top 20, right? And they actually move with them because they are chronic diseases and those people are not okay. So mental health or mental illness is hidden. So when I talk about a holistic approach, also means that when you are treating TB, look out for depression, right? When you're treating HIV, you are the acute phase, you know what happens, HIV psychosis and so on. So for example now, in OPD, in Uganda, in health facilities, there are about 550,000,
when you
events.
say OPD, you mean
outpatient department.
Outpatients.
Yeah,
department.
those who come to the outpatient.
Okay.
But malaria alone, there were 14 million events. So when someone is budgeting, they say, malaria kills, brings more. Let's do that kind of investment in terms of lives averted and so on and so forth. So what can we do? This is the challenge now. We need to raise awareness, as Dr. Sarah Milete was saying. And in this show alone, we are raising awareness. But remember the HIV pandemic in the early 90s. No one wanted to know that whether they were positive. Don't tell me. Why? Because there was no hope. You tell me so that I die faster from stress. Let's call it stress. And by the way, maybe you can ask him a question on stress, because stress is a new depression. At work, people don't detect stress. Yeah, but it's the new, it has no form. So now, if I discover mentally ill, one, will there be confidentiality? Those are things I'm wondering about. Will the record be kept well? Because it has implications. Next time I'm going for a job, someone can sneak in.
On the confidentiality and stigma, because when we say confidentiality, it assumes family members and maybe the healthcare workers. But there are symptoms of mental illness that you cannot hide. For example, somebody goes to the public and they're saying uncoordinated things, and everybody's like, what's wrong? So that one you cannot, it is beyond confidentiality.
But you see, you're talking about the correct thing to do or the right thing to do. But we're also talking about what will attract someone to cooperate. Some of these people are very powerful. They may not cooperate. But if I go to Dr. Kenneth, or if I go to any public facility, my records will be. Because there's a meaning.
Because
well, if I have hypertension, it doesn't mean much out there. I just have hypertension. If you say this guy is mentally ill and that there is a record, it means a lot in terms of my earnings. It means a lot in terms of my standing in society. It means a lot in terms of my opportunities in education and so on. You know, no CEO is going to invest in you when that man is depressed. We cannot promote it.
Actually, in developed countries, you can't be recruited easily. Once you have it on a record.
History. It is almost like a criminal record in jail.
Unsaid.
So we need to find a way of, should I say, closing that gap, breaking the stigma, the same way we approached HIV, to the extent that last time I looked at
normalize it.
Yeah, normalize it.
Yeah.
20 years down the road now, we were prescribing, I'm telling you, I was in a clinic in Kololo, prescribing ARVs for the high and mighty, and the people would still sneak, the place was hidden, people would still sneak in, but today, we are living comfortable with it. Yeah. The ARVs are accessible, everybody knows it's not a death sentence, you know what I mean? So that approach may be needed for mental health, a primary health care approach, people like the president,
but Dr. If I may ask, on that, and I agree that we should normalize it, but what are the challenges? Like in my culture, we have a saying that somebody who has ever got a mental disorder, you cannot rule out behavior of scaring children. So you don't know when they will do
relapse.
Yes. So how do we, and this is a serious culture saying, if you ever run mad, you cannot stop scaring the children. So how do you tell, and this is a challenge that we must demystify, all of us. Yes. How do you tell, if for example you know that Sarah the other day was unwell, and this was the problem, if I come here and talk, how sure are you that I am well? And what I'm saying is coordinated.
Correct. This time, yes. What you're saying
for me, so I would approach it from a public health sense.
It comes with a lot of education.
Because we can never have enough Kenneth.
Yes. Yes.
This one is not going to happen in the shortest time that we have. You know, our Vision 2040 and this kind of thing. And Vision 2040 is about wellness. Ugandans should be well. And you know, as I said,
it's
not wealthy necessarily, and wealth is health. You know, now some countries are measuring gross national happiness as opposed to the income, because you will realize countries like Japan, whose rates are high, but the incomes are also high. US and so on, Greenland, income rates are, you know, above the average of the world, but it's the highest. Lesotho is not the poorest country in Africa. No. It has the so we need to think about how we reconfigure how we measure, you know, wellness. So as I was saying, these public health approaches are the way to go. You know, first of all, health promotion or mental health promotion. People should feel safe that they can come to seek medical help, because many are buried behind there. I think for me, this is the message.
I think that will have to be a lot of sensitization, especially changing the cultural norms. And then, of course, going into changing some of our legal...
But we need also to scale up on the treatment and make it available.
In fact, when you talked about stigma, we shall shortly bring back Honorable Mapinduzi. I tend to think that the people, if Mapinduzi is saying they found from Kenya that many Ugandans are going there, I actually suspect not because of the reason he says that they are going for better health facility. I think majority, are running away from the lack of confidentiality here. Because it is easier for me, especially a journalist who is an investigative journalist, to get to know what is happening in Botabika and who is getting refills of medicines every month from one of you people than to get it from Nairobi.
Get a ticket to go.
So the easiest is take a ticket, go there, get your refill for 3 months when you have the money, and come back. But let me first read what is...
No, tell us before you leave that. Yes. If we are talking about breaking stigma, then why are we saying, in the same breath you're saying that people should, we should go to the, I mean, like we should make it that people are going to, yes.
Normalizing
we should normalize it. It should be as okay as
An HIV
an
test.
HIV test.
Easy to
okay?
talk about your
There are no
emotions.
repercussions as of this act that Dr. Kenneth has been telling us about. What would make it an abomination is if I got tested and some people got to know, then I would lose my job. But if they're telling us that you shouldn't lose your job just because you have been found to have an illness, that is the message that we should be taking out there. Not because now people are saying we should maintain their confidentiality. Yes, as an ethical bit of it, we should maintain their confidentiality.
I get you.
But we should advocate that they actually come out. That let people come out and say, I'm
Normalize
unwell.
crying.
We normalize the illness.
Feeling bad.
And the illness, so that at least then these other issues that we are giving of, we are going across the border to get the care. If we have a champion coming out, if
the Philomena
effect, exactly.
Yeah?
If we have people coming out, then we shouldn't work so hard at hiding.
And by the way, even that Philip
the
Bongo
illness.
Lelutaya has not been achieved. I can tell you, majority of people. How did I know? Just in 2020, just a small, okay, not small, sorry, the cases of COVID. When I got tested positive with COVID, on the second day, the second day I came out and announced on social media that I have COVID. You should have seen the plethora of inboxes.
What's wrong with you?
And the scattering.
How saying, what? Charles, you could do that? People meet me and are shocked. And then they whisper that, man, me, I'm dying with mine quietly. I cannot. People are telling me I cannot do that. And then there are those big people calling and saying, Charles, we applaud your courage.
Yes.
You know
what that
those
does,
are expressions of the lack of learning.
What was
from
wrong with
COVID was unique. Let me tell you why. There's something we call international health regulations, where despite these pandemics, you're not supposed to close borders and so on. But even countries which were promoting this international health regulation, like the USA,
they closed their
they have something called the Global Health Security Agenda to promote the international health regulations, which govern trade and and travel in the event of these outbreaks, which are global in nature. But countries, man, were closed and said,
they were the first to close.
You get those rules were. What I'm just trying to say, COVID was unique, and it presents a unique perspective. The Philip Bongo Lelutaya effect has been over time, just like mental health, right? It's been over time. It's 20 years today. If you went and told someone, that girlfriend of yours, I was a medic, and we handled cases where, a patient of HIV in 2007 would come with a girlfriend and say,
don't tell her.
No. Say, please tell her I'm positive, we can't have a child. And the girlfriend was like, me, I want your child, right? And that means many things, right? Meaning people had begun to see how you can have it safely and so on, this prevention of mother to child. Now we're even moving to elimination of mother to child, meaning we are saying bye-bye to HIV very soon, by the way. That's how I see it. But the beginning wasn't simple. It was even probably more stigmatizing than now. Than COVID. COVID-19, you can actually recover from it. But HIV, every time someone go, it was a death sentence. But now we have come a long way. So I believe with the mental health,
we need those funds.
If we if we improve awareness and make it integrated, because mental health also comes with this number of diseases I mentioned. Mental illnesses come with this number of diseases I mentioned. You can open up, and the medical practitioners.
Okay. I want to bring in very fast the audience from out there to join in the conversation with their questions and comments. Some of them that we have sampled. There are so many we cannot take all of them. But Evans Lumumba from Budo says, I concur with Dr. Sarah that the government does nothing about mental health. I remember in 1998 when over 100 students of Kichwamba College were burned to death. Nothing was done to the survivors till now. That some have never regained their consciousness due to the shock they went through. Mbahingana Emon from Kasese says, I'm watching you live, but it's extremely worse in Kasese because of the clashes in 2016. Greetings to Sarah. I like good language. Sarah, you have fans there. Robert Nsabiyumva from Seguku says, mental illness is not segregated of status of an individual, but I would rather say it also happens at different levels, and the causes could be different depending on a person's status, socially, environmental, cultural. Yes, Robert, that's what the doctors here have said, the technical guys here have said. Rosalind from Gulu City says, my major concern in Gulu, when look right from the time of Konyo War, war causes trauma which result into mental problems. COVID has caused medical problems, recent problems of high commodities in the market. With 5,000, you cannot do anything for the family. Achato from Kitintale says, I'm just here enjoying and admiring Dr. Ekwaro Buku's debate. How I wish they would have voted for him to power.
And I would also experience that acute injection of money also can.
Acute injection of what?
Of finance can also change your mental well-being. And
could become a statistic.
I become a statistic and start visiting my brother quietly. You can give me a cheat to go to Nairobi.
Frederick says, to Dr. Obuku, how does internet addiction among younger demographics, especially teenagers, impact mental health?
It is 1,500 reported cases in the last fiscal year. In the annual sector performance report, actually I was very surprised to find 1,500 internet addiction diagnoses. So it's a growing problem.
1,500 out of how many sampled?
No, just one reported. Those who visited
just reported
for internet addiction.
Clinical data.
Yeah, that's in the health facility. So it's a problem. It's a growing problem.
Maybe digitalization still taking root. We just say that is a new report.
It's a new, yeah.
It's just
and not properly diagnosed.
Yes, I agree with you. Because
no, for me,
there is nothing you can measure it against.
No. The fact that it is being
1,500 reported.
Yeah. The fact that Ministry of Health is putting, you see, when someone says nothing is being done, that is false. Yeah. Ministry of Health is in charge of planning, policy, and then the other units below Ministry of Health headquarters is implementation. I was very happy to see, by the way, 8.5 billion being spent off budget on mental health. I was shocked because I didn't even know there's 8.5 billion, $2 million off budget. So I don't know what was spent on budget because you have to read the ministerial statement. I just saw it off budget in the annual sector performance report. It's about $2 million, which is a good beginning.
During COVID, that was COVID time.
Okay.
Psychosocial support.
You get that. That's a good beginning. That
someone special moment.
Yeah, because of COVID.
But with the effect of COVID, maybe you need to maintain and increase.
No, actually increase substantially, but also integrate.
What is in the new budget?
I'll just tell you that one of the things we've done.
It's 1%.
No, that was the previous, and we are yet to see what's in the new budget. One of the things we've done is actually done a mental health investment case, and we are trying to show the return on investments in preventing and treating mental health.
By the way, let me just say that the third biggest cause of disability, you know, when you are measuring the impact of health on the economy and livelihood, they use what you call disability adjusted life years in health economics. Let me just say disability. You are inability to be productive in society. The third biggest cause, guess what it is? It is depression.
Depression actually is the
and
biggest.
This depression, as I told you behind the headlines, you're in your very nice suit, but after this you may, you know, you know what I mean? Yeah. So what I'm saying, it can't be detected. It's not, there's no test. There's no COVID test. There's no.
For example, if you appreciate my work very well, and then after the show you are saying I did well, you know this is good, then I'm thinking, will I be paid enough?
Yeah,
I
go into
actually
depression.
Depression and internalizing
But that is not the case with me. I'm happy that is not the case with me yet, at least yet. But let me finish this. Ronnie from Gulu says, skyrocketing prices have increased mental illness.
Correct.
Of course.
This is where the citizens are heavily burdened by taxes, high prices of commodities that are rising day and night, yet a lot of money is in the hands of the elite rich, and the poor are empty-handed. Both go to buy the same commodities, I think, that from the same market.
Same,
Ronnie has mixed up a lot of things here. Because of the mix-up, they are not necessarily facts, but his opinion as expressed. Betty Mutama Mudua from Mbale City says, I would suggest let the government recruit more mental health workers, counselors in health centers, because people down at the grassroots, like Dr. Sarah has stated, are traumatized by COVID-19 and now school fees and rent together with economic inflation. Finally, Amy from Gulu says, I want to agree with Dr. Buku on poverty as a stressor. In Gulu here, we have had situations where men are committing suicide because their spouses have refused them to sell 2 or 3 cups of beans to get money for drinking alcohol. Very interesting discussions, but we are left with less than 5 minutes. Yeah, that's what happens with interesting discussions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give each of you 1 minute to, in terms of thinking about the causes, how big the problem is, how challenging the problem is, and especially the drivers. I'm going to ask each of you to give me in their parting shots what they think should be the solution to the problem, and what you think portends for the future. So starting with Sarah.
I think for me there are 3 options or pointers for the way forward. One is massive sensitization, because I think a lot of cases that progress to disorder level can be prevented when people know what to do, the signs to watch out for, and the help to give to their loved ones, because that basic information is largely missing. The second issue is scaling up the treatments. The Mental Health Act 2019 provides for mental health facilities at community levels. The act should be implemented. So I hope that in the new budget, given the situation we are dealing with out of COVID, I hope that the Ministry of Health can prioritize this area and scale up treatment up to the primary health caregivers, being able to help the communities, and in earlier stages, which prevents a lot of issues again. And the third one is, of course, comes in with a budget. Can we all prioritize this as a nation and know that the mental wellness of a citizen is primary, is critical, and determines the productivity of a nation and economies and the rest that a progressive nation should have? Because when the citizens are not well, then you have no population even to tax or plan for or do development for. So we need a mindset change at a top leadership level, including the way we handle difficult situations. There are scenarios where I know you said the state is doing something about the situation of the people with skyrocketing commodity prices and economic struggles they are faced with. I know there are some interventions, but most of these interventions don't mean anything to ordinary citizens. Somebody will say we are putting money in UDB. How many Ugandans can access money from UDB? You are talking about the top 1% of Uganda's population that you are taking care of. What should the 99% do? Somebody will say we are the monetary policies, there is no problem, so we are going to do nothing. Does that communicate to an ordinary person? It does not. No. So we need to know that the actions we take, the communications, the leadership must invest in giving hope to the people.
Thank you so much. Dr. Kenneth.
So I think I'll totally agree with the submission of Sarah here. But one thing that I would add, and this is talking to the general public, that in raising awareness is that we should create or build resilience, because it's easy to propose these solutions, but sometimes the solutions don't come easy. And as a mental health worker, we bank on the ability of the individual to deal with the changing situations.
Wow.
Okay, because sometimes you cannot change.
You still bank on the individual's ability.
Yes, because sometimes you cannot change the social situation. Like you cannot wake up from an impoverished state. And for example, COVID presented us with a big challenge. The point that we could not take it away, but we were presented with a challenge. And so one thing I look at it is we build resilience, and we start to look at, we find comfort in pain. I want to put it that way. Like you find a way of coping positively with the situation, because the negative coping strategies is what lead us to mental health: excessive worry, taking alcohol, domestic violence, and so on and so forth. So let's look at the changes differently, and given another opportunity, would come and discuss some of the strategies that you can employ in order to deal with the tough times and tough situations. But that said, I agree that financing for the mental health should be increased. I agree that we need awareness raising, because people are not in touch with their emotions. There's a lot of alternative explanation on mental health. I agree that we should integrate mental health into primary health care, that we have these services, and scale up the services as well at that level. So as a tip, I want us to advise people to support each other. Having a mental illness is like any other illness. And part of the treatment is the support we give persons with mental illness. The stigma only worsens the illness. So let's support people with mental illness, let's support people, and let's come out and talk about this. That ultimately we break the stigma. Because in so breaking the stigma, we shall encourage people to come out early, and we can provide care for them early in time. So because no one is spared. For as long as you have a brain, you can get a mental illness. So treat someone the way you would want them to treat you if you had a mental illness, because anyone can get it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Janet.
Thank you, Charles. I think all the points have been said by Sarah and Dr. Kenneth. But Dr. Kenneth said something about gender-based violence. And in our discussion, I think we have not capitalized on the fact that the children are suffering. That we have children as young as 6 committing suicide.
What?
Okay.
Wow.
Yes.
In Uganda?
Yes, in Uganda.
Committing suicide.
Was it in, yes, it was one of those districts up north. A 6-year-old, 11-year-old committing suicide. So while we are...
Some after getting the primary exams?
Yes, someone feeling a burden to their parents for reasons that they shouldn't be worrying about as children. So let us also not forget the children, that their mental health is suffering at the moment. So in addition to the awareness creation, as individuals, I would also urge us to educate ourselves. Let us get to know what mental health and mental illness is all about. That if we can get awareness from an individual level, then we can be able to be more resilient, and then in our small capacities, create awareness with the people around us, and then at that we are breaking stigma, as well as being kind. You know, because we are all suffering, the stresses are everywhere, but if we can be kind to ourselves and to each other, that is at least one sure way of having good mental health. So that is it. And then people should seek help. One last one, people should seek help. The help is available. The government facilities, as Dr. Kenneth was saying, the 13 health centers, 13 regional referrals, the national referral, then they are private players. Okay? They are private players. We are there to provide the help. Much as we are creating awareness, then we should also know that if you are aware and then you have the issue, then seek the help that you need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Oboko.
Yes, saving the best for last, but I have nothing to say.
There is a doctor,
Because
there is a Mapenduzi. If you want to be
there. Mapenduzi is there.
Honorable Mapenduzi.
Now, okay. Yeah, let's Mapenduzi.
Maybe Mapenduzi comes first. Honorable Mapenduzi.
We had even forgotten him. This round he didn't talk. We should have allowed him to talk also.
I just decided to, it's good to listen, especially when you have people like you, Dr. Obuko and Dr. Kenneth, and you on a day-to-day basis deal with some of these issues. So I thought giving you time is okay. But let me just say this very briefly. First, I want to thank you again, Charles, for creating this opportunity, because it's part of what we should be doing, so we can create massive awareness, and that's what the population needs. I think when you look at our laws, and especially the Mental Health Act, and you compare with what we have in Kenya, Kenya also has a Mental Health Act. I think we have done a good job. I do not want to say we have done everything, but I think the law that we have in place is good. We can improve further, but what is left as the country is to make sure that we put into practice what we have in this act. And just like Dr. Sarah Birete indicated, I think it's going to make no sense if we have this, this mental health act, and then we don't implement what is outlined in this, and especially the aspect of integrating mental health services, at primary health care level. How are we going to do this? So we shouldn't. Of course, Uganda is known, and many people know Uganda for having very beautiful laws, and where we have a big challenge is implementation. So definitely we have to do that. But I can assure you that especially from the perspective of the Parliamentary Forum on Mental Health, that 248 members of Parliament, it's a sizable number, that when we come together with the level of commitment I have seen, we need to demand, but also play an active role in making sure that we put some of these things into practice. Now, Charles, you talked about you asked whether I mentioned the number of people coming to Kenya to get services from here, and indeed, as you noted, majority come because of the quality, and I can tell you, and I'm sure the doctor seated there can also tell you the kind of services these guys here have. In as far as mental health is concerned, it's much better than what we have, and we have to be honest, and we have to take that positively and improve as a country. But also the other important part which you mentioned is the aspect of privacy. Majority of the people come here because they feel stigmatized, so they want to make this extremely private. And from the information I have gathered, most of the people who come are high-profile people, and then you wonder why they don't want to get these services in Uganda, because like I'll tell you what somebody said. Somebody said, in your country, Uganda, when you are found to be having mental illness-related conditions, sometimes some people will take it differently, and they'll use it as a justification for having you removed from your position, whether you're in the civil service or you're in a political. So some of these people think the moment it's known out there, they are not sure who is going to use the information and how. So it's again how it's how we looked at mental illness. And just like Dr. Kenneth put it, we need to begin treating this just like any other health condition, so we can begin to. But Oguti, and I'm sure this is also in Oguti put it in a very interesting way. And I think what he's trying to say here is that how do we make sure every institution begins to look at mental health issues as an issue that affects everyone. you at UBC, those at Parliament, those at different ministries and agencies, how do we as a country begin to get involved and create environment, even from within our own institutions, so that we have mechanism of supporting people, including detecting cases like depression and creating environment in many countries, developed countries that pay a lot of attention to mental health issues. They create avenues where people, employees who are facing challenges are supported, whether through counseling and all that. And that is why we need to, as a country, do a lot in supporting the private sector, especially those involved in mental health services. We need to deliberately, because if as a country we are not able to recruit enough people, we are not able to do everything in our health facilities, then we need to work with the other players in making sure that they fill the gap. As I conclude, somebody from Gulu mentioned a very important point that I want to touch on briefly. Charles, recently I was looking at some statistics and I realized in Uganda, mental health, cases, the prevalence rate is higher in northern Uganda compared to other places. But when you go deeper, you find like cases of suicide. Lamore district, which is in northern Uganda, is reported to be having the highest number of people who are taking their lives. And when you dig deeper, it's very much linked to difficult experiences, difficult situation, and all that. So it's a condition that is worrying. Now, what do we have for the future? And for me, from what many people are saying, I think the future is even a lot more worrying. Poverty is biting hard. Unemployment is rising day and night. Substance abuse is on. So there are a lot of things that if we don't prepare, then tomorrow we will be talking even about a lot more worse situation. So there is a lot that we have to do as a country. Now, finally, as I conclude, much as Kenya is doing a lot, and I am grateful to be having this opportunity to learn from them, which will help us as a forum in Parliament to come together and try to reflect deeply on how we can do better. And as members of Parliament, what role can we play a lot more effectively? But much as we have that, I think as a country, we are also doing well in terms of, making sure that there is a lot more involvement and participation. And as I talk this month, June, there are members of Parliament who are going to sit at a very high level, discussing at a global level how we can get a lot more involved. How do we take the advocacy to another level? But the other thing that that touched me when we interacted with the senator here and other people, they're actually impressed with the level of involvement and the level of goodwill that especially members of Parliament are showing in other people. So we also have our strength. And I think we need to look at these efforts positively and do what it takes to support, especially those who are in the front line. How do we create an environment for our professionals to use the knowledge they have got so they can give the services we need? Because we have the knowledge, we have the people. Why don't we give them the jobs? Why don't we put the money? And these are the discussions that we have to, without fear or favor, discuss with the people at the ministry and different players so we are able to find a solution. Otherwise, thank you very much for the opportunity and I wish you well.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mapenduzi. And Dr. Kenneth here has said that MPs will also undergo training on mental health. The membership of the Forum on Mental Health, are going to be trained.
Sorry for interrupting you, Lady Charles, but just like Dr. Buko observed, sometimes when you have, and by the way, someone who is sick may not necessarily come out to say, I am sick. So I think we also, just as Kenneth is putting it, your engagement with members of Parliament should also help so people get to understand a lot more deeper. But if we can also look at how to help, because just like you said, and we should not live in denial, sometimes our actions may not necessarily be coming from the blue. Sometimes we may be having underlying factors.
Thank you.
Kenneth, I think, yeah.
Thanks for being candid. We are in the same boat, so we are all Ugandans. Yes, we are all traumatized. You know, MPs go through a lot of pressures, economic pressures. The voters asking them to build all sorts of things and pay school fees and bury people, and this can stress people, by the way. So I agree with you. Someone from Sierra Leone, a Ugandan who is studying in Sierra Leone, said something that I thought I should share for our viewers before they go to bed. We need to look at schools as far as mental health is concerned. What strategy do doctors have to curb, you know, drug abuse, for example? The genesis of drug abuse is in schools, and if not handled well, it will be a big problem. Then he says, public transport is another problem. These people in public transport, if not are not monitored annually. In other countries, public transport drivers are tested on annual basis. I think for me, I tend to agree with him on that. And then Michael from Kaberamaido says, Charles, I must admit, I like how you balance topics at UBC from on the behind the headlines, from politics to health to economy to everything. Tell Dr. Obuku that I still remember when he led an industrial action for health workers.
We were mentally
ill. Then he says, on drug abuse, we must fight it together. Toxic substances, if not fought, then cases will be on the increase. The situation of substance abuse is even worse in urban areas. Then finally, Dr. Otim Tom says, Charles, we need to demystify mental health stigma by encouraging clients to be handled by clinical psychologists as well. That means clinical psychologists should be employed by government. On that note, finally, Dr. Buku, in 1 minute.
Yeah,
but,
thank you.
I thought that, you know, that 1 minute, I got a message from some of the members of the allied medical workers or something, who are crying that they have been divided. The nurses have been taken away and given their enhancement pay, and now they are left.
Yeah, so I wanted to say that everything actually, you know, the Ministry of Health has all these plans which are put in place. The specific interventions have been mentioned. But what can government do? One, frequently revisit these plans, make sure the interventions are informed by research, which is Ugandan in nature, to find the priority interventions which work. They must be able to work, and then they monitor them, generally speaking. Then two, the interventions must target specific groups which are at highest risk. That's when you get a return on investment. Let's look at medical workers who are on strike. You know, mental health could actually be a result of or a cause of occupational safety and health. Look at the COVID situation where the cows were telling nurses go and work without masks. Sometimes the midwives have to handle mothers without gloves. You know, these situations, other than the pay, expose these workers, the health workers or medical workers, to these stressors. And this should be taken care of. So that is a specific group. The other thing is caring for the carer. Caring for the carer. You know, the late Dr. Margaret Mungerera started that program for the doctors. And now we have even formed football clubs, those who want circle, and so on. But also we make annually we make a day, Nakasero Hospital, where and so on, where we encourage doctors to quietly go and sort out their medical issues, and the specialists are there waiting for them. Because we realized that even as you may be sick, and you are there attempting to take care of people, so there's some of the unique interventions you may want to put in place. There's a complete school health program, which used to be there under Dr. Tuatwa. I don't know that it's still there. Honorable Dr. Tuatwa went to Parliament and so on. Actually, I did my elective in the 4th year, around 2003, 2002. At the school health program, at that time we were handling malaria and so on. But I think the Ministry of Health, together with one implementing partner, one of these USAID and CDC can partner and strengthen the school health program where they can, reconfigure and handle this drug business and so on, and put in place interventions which work. Drug abuse is not new in this world. It has happened in the Americas, in other countries, and we can, import from research evidence what works. So me, I'm thinking targeted interventions. Finally, handling the social determinants of health and mental health. Poverty. We must continue to fight poverty. Targeting not the 1%, but the 25. Are we at 25% before COVID? I think at some point. Now may have gone about to 40%. But targeting the very poor who don't have food, because once there is no food security, you cannot tell me come out and we talk about counseling and this kind of business, because I'm hungry. So if you look at the pathway to mental wellness or mental illness, the basic needs must be handled.
Okay.
Issues to do with the food, shelter, and human interaction, and and so on and so forth, according to that Maslow's hierarchy. Then health security. I think to a great extent, things like a national health insurance scheme, to a great extent, can improve the general wellness and in a grand way, intervene and reduce the burden of mental health. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Buku. Thank you, Janet. Thank you very much, Dr. Kenneth, and thanks, Sarah. Thank you very much to Honorable Mapenduzi joining us from Nairobi through Zoom. And thanks for that sharing. You brought very, very important comparative views from the side of Kenya. And we will be continuing with this discussion. I saw on one of the messages someone saying, Charles, thanks for the discussion. You had a very good discussion. Now we want you to also discuss schools and the increase of school fees, which is overburdening us. I have just seen on the... Yes, a new trauma. From the entire team here, the production team, from Margaret, from Etiang, and from the other support team, I wish to thank all of you, and especially for you out there who sits there in your sitting room to listen to us. I will not go away without expressing our sympathy to the family of the journalist in Masindi who was murdered, shot in cold blood, and we await the investigations of what actually happened. And if it is true that he was shot because of his job, it's not something that we should be seeing in this age. But our hearts and sympathies go out to the family of a colleague, and we pray that your soul rests in peace. But like I said, we await the investigations that are being done. From the entire team here, yeah.
I think those who can, we should also walk to Namgongo. It's good healing for the nation.
Yes, we wish success to all pilgrims. The joke in town today was that to all matters because of some mistake. But to all pilgrims, we wish all of you good pilgrimage. All those who are going on pilgrimage to, especially those walking and to Namugongo, we wish you success, good health, and it's good for our soul healing. So if you can, please do it and go to pray as well, but also for health. Thank you very much. God bless you all, and God bless Uganda.